Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone show 172 for the 5th of February 2012. Stefan Sojka here. I'm all by myself because Richard Saunders is not very well. It seems he picked up a trans-Pacific bug last week flying back to Australia from the US and has lost his voice. Well, there may be a solution. I have just stuck in 2 acupuncture needles into the communication meridians of my crown chakra, and I'm going to try and channel Richard into the studio and see if we can get him to co-host anyway, because I believe he's so out of it after his trip that his only his astral self is conscious at this moment. Richard, are you there? Hello, Stefan. How's it going? Hey, Richard, you are actually here. Well, I'm not actually here, Stefan. I'm actually channeling myself through your voice from my astral plane self that's residing, just hovering above my corpse in my bed, and I'm completely out of it. But I'm here all the same. Well, here we are, just the two of us, just hanging loose and doing a little intro. Well, Stefan, we've got a big show coming up. On this week's show, we've got another report from our brand new reporter, Penny Chan. Penny interviews magician and mentalist Mark Edward. Sounds good, Richard. Not to be confused with so-called psychic John Edward. They could be brothers, could they, Richard? No, Stefan, they're not. Although Mark can do much the same sort of thing. How? We'll find out at the top of the show. Richard, I think Penny's doing a great job of being a new host on the show. What do you think? Stefan, I think she's doing an incredible job. And by the way, Richard, thanks also to all the people who've been enjoying the download of our little making of the theme song. That was a lot of fun there. Oh, yes, it was, Stefan. It was a lot of fun. And good to see you didn't get too trashed by the end of that, and you actually got through and finished the job for us. Thank you very much. No worries, Richard. Following that, Richard, I believe before you came home and lost your voice, you caught up with Penny Chan for a chat at the Skeptics in the pub at the University of California, Irvine. Yes, I did, Stefan, and we had a lot of fun. There's even a couple of photos that you might see on Facebook or Twitter. Sounds very good. I wish I was there. Richard, but unfortunately I'm stuck here in the studio with my acupuncture needles in my meridians, channeling you, just finding out all about it. Then, Stefan, it's Dr Rachie Reports with Dr Rachel Dunlop, who is getting more famous by the minute, it seems. National TV, radio, skeptics in the pub. This week, Dr Rachie fills us in on a new group organised here in Australia to bring pressure on universities to stop teaching woo. Friends of Science in Medicine. Richard, that sounds like a great idea. It certainly is, Stefan, and if you want to see the reaction from the forces of darkness to this group, just Google Friends of Science in Medicine. I can imagine she would be whipping up a storm. Richard, I believe this week we have yet another instalment from not Dr. Stefan Sojka, but this week the Reverend Stefan Sojka, who I believe is bringing a revolution in software to the worshipping world. Stefan, I can't wait to hear all about it. Anything else, Richard? What have we got after that? Well, I'm a little bit too out of it to know what I'm talking about, Stefan, but I believe we're going to round off the show with a follow-up report from Ian Bryce of the Australian Skeptics about the Rossi ECAT cold fusion machine. Has the world found a new way to produce cheap, clean energy that will completely change the world? I think Ian is still a little sceptical. Well, Richard, you better go back and let your astral self blend with your normal self, lying there in your bed all jet-lagged and gurgly and everything else, and you can't even talk, and I will get on with the show. In the meantime, I'm sure all our listeners wish you a speedy recovery. Thank you, Stefan. I think I'll go back to bed now.
Here's Penny Chan with a penny for your thoughts.
When I was 10, I checked out a library book about magic tricks. I learned how to make coins disappear and stick pins through my finger, which really made my mom squirm when I performed the feat for her. Mark Edward began in much the same way. Introduced to magic tricks by his grandfather as a young child, today he is a professional magician, mentalist, educator, author, and blogger on all things magic and psychics. Recently, I sat in on one of his magic classes. He went around the room and asked students what they were interested in learning. I know it's cheesy, but I really think it's cool when you make things disappear, like coins and things. I'd also like to learn how to make cards come out of my mouth. But
okay. I don't know if I want to write that down or not. Let's just put...
we'll start slow, though. Little things.
It's from the mouth. Not one of my specialties, but we'll see if we can find some. You can do that one, can't you, Bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I'm going to put my own specialty, which is mentalism. Now, what I try and do with my mentalism is combine as many of these different things as possible, because that's my own specialty. So for those of you who are new to magic and you don't know what mentalism is, it is not a disease.
A few days later, I met up with Mark at a coffee shop in San Pedro, where he told me about his career as a magician, psychic, and mentalist, and his most recent book, Psychic Blues. As a former psychic performer, Mark has seen deep inside the ruse. Still, he keeps an open mind to the possibility of psychic power, and now works with organizations like the Independent Investigations Group, testing individual claims of psychic abilities. And this book that you have coming out in April, you said?
Yeah. I hope I've got my fingers crossed. Psychic Blues.
Psychic Blues.
Yeah.
And what's that about?
Psychic Blues is about how I got started doing psychic readings. It was basically my whole career from the bottom to the top and back down again.
Okay.
Because I kind of made it, one of my goals was to try and climb to the top, see how far I could get in the psychic business, but not being a believer.
Yeah.
In other words, lying to the liars.
How well you are.
Well, I lied to the liars, you know. They didn't know that I was scamming them the whole time.
Scamming the scammers.
Scamming the scammers. Because I really wanted to learn the big market, because they were making millions and millions of, they still are, but now it's just more diverse. But for example, when the 900 lines came out, they were making millions a year. So it's dark. It's a dark humor book. It's not a metaphysical book in any shape or form.
It's dark because it's like true.
It's true.
There's scamming.
You
get to see the inside of how the scammers work.
You get to see how they did their infomercials, how they operated in terms of the 900 things. But there's all sorts of other parts of the psychic world most people don't know about. There's the agents that book them. There's the churches. There's the
so wrong that they go to churches.
There's the event planner that does weddings and bar mitzvahs and things like that hires a psychic. There's just a lot of different things that people don't realize. They think that most psychics are like these ascetic people that sit in a yoga position all day or something.
They're in every city I go to. You see them off the highway. They're neon signs, like palm readings, tarot.
And now, I really believe that we're in. I call it the golden age of the con, because the worse the economy gets, the more these things happen.
The more desperate people get.
Yeah. So now we're in a state where millions of people have lost their jobs. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Not only are people looking for answers, but people who don't have jobs are going, hey, this psychic thing looks pretty good. I can read tarot cards just as good as anybody else.
It was on Craigslist when I was out of work. I would look on Craigslist for jobs. Yeah. And there was one that was for psychics. It's like they come in and audition, and I'm just like, God, I could do that. And it's like $18 an hour.
That's what everybody thinks.
Sweet, I could, but then I really consider it because I was desperate for money. So I'm like, but what if?
But your conscience stopped you.
Well,
your father wouldn't like that very much.
Well, if these suckers call in, it's their fault. But also, I'm like, what if you or somebody calls in?
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't
and tries to mess with me. No, yeah, I'm just.
You think I would spend $3.99 to mess with you a minute?
I don't know. There might be some other, science journalist out there going,
no,
I'm going to.
There's not many skeptics. I did it for 9 years, and I'd say maybe maybe one skeptic every 200 calls, and most of them were not what we would call intelligent, intellectual skeptics. They were just daring me. They go, "What color socks am I wearing right now?" And I go, "White." And they go, "Wow, man, you're good." It's just like,
that wouldn't work for me. I never wear white socks.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying. I took a big chance. So. I mean, it's just there's so many people. Eventually, there's going to become a tipping point where there'll be so many psychics that it won't be special anymore. But we haven't reached that saturation point yet. So I kind of wanted to put this book out sort of to warn people. So it's not really it's not what I would call a debunk or an exposure. I didn't want it to be
just
that.
Just your experience, just what you know.
Yeah, and my idea was to try and reach the biggest market I could get, and I've learned that you can't reach the biggest market by just being Mr. Skeptic, And I also think that there is some positive benefits to it in some ways, because it's the poor man's therapy. If you can't afford to go to a shrink or an analyst,
well, it's
you go to
the
gypsy.
placebo effect,
That too.
Just to know that somebody is looking in the eye and talking to you about your life, even if it's a psychic who's scamming you.
Yeah. You might get a little
better.
something. Oh, yeah.
You feel better.
Of course you feel better.
There's times, even though I don't believe in psychics.
Yeah.
There's a psychic / tarot card reader right, within walking distance of my house. And
Yeah.
so I always pass by it and I think, I just want to go in and see.
There's never anybody in there, is there?
No one in there. But she also runs a New Age shop next door to it, so that's how she sells crystals and candles to people that want to just do whatever in their house. But I'm just like...
So you always want to go in there?
No, I just want to go in there and just see what she has to say. What will she tell me about it?
Yeah, but see, that's I would say that's 80 to 90% of the people that are out there.
Really, just curiosity?
Yeah, they're not planning on really doing what the gypsy says. They're planning a whole life around it. They're just curious.
Yeah, but the thing that stops me is, I don't really want to pay her,
like I say in my book, I don't think there's a whole spectrum of readers and ways they do things. So, I'd say, again, 90% of them are crooks, but the other 10%, you never know. And if you're willing to get a second opinion, if you got some really powerful life experience that you want to get a second opinion on, and you can't go to your family, or you don't want to go to a church, why not just go to, it would be nice if you could go to a stranger on the street, like here at Starbucks, and just say, "Hey, listen, I needed to make a decision," but people won't talk to you. They'll think you're crazy,
When did you start doing magic?
I started doing magic when I was around 11 years old. But I was exposed to it through my grandfather. So from the very time I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I was seeing it being performed. But I didn't understand what it was, because a child is just innocent. You just think magic is everywhere anyway. But by the time you're 10 or 11 and you start to understand, wait a minute, things don't normally float in the air unless it's on a cartoon, So probably by the time I was 10 or 11, I started going to magic shops, and it was like toys. I had toys that I played with, but it was magic. And my parents were pretty much encouraging on that level. They liked it because when I got pretty good at it by 12 or 13, I would entertain their guests when they would come over for dinner,
Dinner theater.
Yeah, with my little cape. I had a little cape and everything.
And then where was this? Was this in California?
I was in Palos Verdes, California.
Okay.
Yeah. But I quickly got bored with regular magic. I didn't like it. It was just, And that's how I got into mentalism as I started. I really like the mind reading stuff better.
So, and can you do mentalism at the Magic Castle?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks.
All right.
Yeah, they don't. The only thing about the castle is they don't like people who do mentalism. Well, let's put it this way. They have mentalists work there, but they don't actively encourage a lot of mentalists because they don't like anything that people believe in.
Yeah.
They want it to be obviously an illusion. Mm-hmm. So that's where I kind of part company with them, is because I want people to think that I have supernatural powers.
But you call yourself a mentalist to distinguish yourself
from magician.
I was going to say from psychic. I mean, is that...
Yeah. Well, for a while I was in a group called the Psychic Entertainers Association, so I called myself a psychic entertainer. And that worked for a while.
You're in the independent investigations group.
Yes.
When did you first get into that?
I was working with your father on the Skeptologist TV show, and I had done the Penn and Teller show, and then I did an NBC show about fake psychics, and I've always been involved. I've always been fascinated by how they work, but I really didn't. And I've also been involved with the skeptical movement since the 70s, because my idea was if something real comes along, I mean, I was never really a believer, but there was a side of me that said, what if, or don't be closed-minded, maybe, like when I first got into mentalism, because I was learning all these things about clairvoyance and precognition and telekinesis and all these things that sounded like they were in the lab, they must be real. And I didn't know any better when I was doing magic, but it fascinated me that might happen, that there might be this possibility. So I got involved with skepticism because I figured if something is discovered or uncovered, that the skeptics are going to be the ones that will find it. It won't come from the believers because they already believe in it. It's like they already... What big whoop, so you can levitate. We know that, But if the skeptics found somebody and they tested them and they were doing these more than chance things, then that's where it would come from. It would come from science. It wouldn't come from, the New Age movement.
Have you actually tested any? So can you talk about some of those? They're all at iigwest.com. You can see because and the IIG has really moved dramatically forward. I mean, we're really getting a lot of steam right now because they've started to really focus on being proactive and taking in a lot of applications for people who say they can do things. So, we've had some very interesting ones, and we've got a huge backlist of people that we're just trying to decide how to test them, because the protocol has to be decided and agreed upon by both parties. So, that's not always easy, because most of these people, they on their applications, they say, I'm psychic, and we say, well, what can you do? Anything, I can do anything. I talk to God. And we're like, well, how do we test that? Show us how we can test that you... We had this one guy, I won't mention his name, who says that he could be a Bible prophet reincarnated. And we're going, okay, how do we test that? So we kind of put it in their laps, show us how we can test that, and then we'll do it. And then they stop writing, suddenly. So it boils down to that's what steering committee does, is we look at the ones that still hang in there after a couple months and really believe that they have something. Before we parted ways, I decided to show off some of my magic skills, one magician to another. Pick a card, any card.
All right.
And stick it back in the deck.
All right.
All right. Are you thinking of your card?
I am. I'm concentrating.
Concentrate.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will shuffle the deck. And you are sending me psychic messages of your card.
Yes.
Okay. And was this your card?
No.
Okay.
Hey, Kenny.
Oh, hi, Tom.
Nice day at this park, yeah?
Yes, great weather.
Oh, look, a unicorn.
Unicorn? There are no such things as unicorns, silly.
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't.
Hey, guys, what are you arguing about?
Tom thinks unicorns are real.
They so are.
Let's look this up in the Skeptic's Dictionary.
The what?
How can we do this in this park? There is no computer here.
You guys probably don't know about the Skeptic's Dictionary app. Available now for iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch in the App Store.
Wow, cool.
The app lets you access all of the great Skeptic's Dictionary articles when you're on the go. Here, let me look up unicorns.
Oh, cool. Kenny, prepare to be proven wrong.
It says here, the unicorn is a creature from fables.
Aha!
Actually, I see now that someone just dumped their ice cream cone on that horse's head. Thanks, Skeptics Dictionary iPhone app.
Well, I'm still in the United States, folks, and only for a few days. I've been visiting with Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com, a good friend. But I'm really happy to catch up with our brand new reporter, Penny Chan. Hi, Penny.
Hi, Richard.
And I've sent you on a little mission to ask some questions which will be coming up in, or maybe even on the next episode of the Skeptic Zone. I hope you're having fun being a Skeptic Zone reporter.
I'm having so much fun. I really like it.
I'm really pleased to hear that. And I even noticed that your dad bought you a new microphone your iPhone to do interviews.
Yes, and it's working great so far. It's fun to use.
So you've been asking lots of people lots of questions, which I'm looking forward to hearing the answers on the Skeptic Zone. And I must say, Penny, I had the great pleasure of having lunch with your dad. Your dad up in San Francisco, in Berkeley, in fact, a couple of days ago. Oh, he's a nice guy. Let's just say it. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And he took us on a little tour of...
Did you see the school? Did you see...
The school where he teaches, yeah.
Yeah, have you ever been there before? Berkeley or the school?
Oh, well, I've been around there, but not to where he is exactly. Mm-hmm. But the funniest thing was... And maybe our listeners don't realise this, that at Berkeley University... Nobel laureates get their own parking spot. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and you think, oh wow, that's nice, but it costs a fortune to park at Berkeley.
Yes, it does. I'm lucky enough. Whenever I need to go there, I just borrow my dad's parking pass and just use that.
But he showed us the parking spots allocated for Nobel laureates, and I think there were 7 or 8, which I counted.
Yeah.
Good grief. That's amazing. Well, we're here we're at the University of California at Irvine, which is not far from Los Angeles. We're here for Skeptics in the Pub, which is really great. It's a huge table full of skeptics, and I'm so pleased, and everyone's coming up to say hello to me, which is really nice. I really like the concept of Skeptics in the Pub. I think it's great. I know it's all around the world, and I keep saying to people, if you don't have a Skeptics in the Pub in your city, no matter where you are in the world, why not organize one?
You really should. It's so easy to do. Just Facebook or meetup.com. I don't know if you guys have that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's worldwide. Yeah, meetup.com is the way to go, I think.
So, yeah.
Facebook, of course. Pick a pub, which is a pub. Any pub will do, really. Hopefully one that serves food. I think that's a good move. Mm-hmm. Pick a night. Put it out there. If you do, let me know at the Skeptic Zone. I'll certainly be happy to promote it. And you meet wonderful, interesting people.
Yeah, it's fun. I really like it. I mean, I look forward to coming.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I live in Long Beach, which is halfway between, kind of halfway between, Irvine, where we are now, and then there's one that meets in North Hollywood with the Greater LA Skeptics.
Right.
So it's kind of difficult to get up there, especially on Saturday nights. So I think I've only gone to 1 or 2 up there in Hollywood, which I love that bunch too. I love you guys. You guys are great. But it's easier for me to come down here because there's never any traffic coming down here.
Yeah, it's a lovely pub. I mean, any pub will do, folks. It really will. And you won't regret it. It's a good night. And you meet, like I said, you make so many friends.
They're all your friends.
You do. You meet really good friends who have a similar interest. And isn't that what everybody craves? Yeah. Meeting people with the similar interest. Penny, it's so nice to have you on the Skeptic Zone. And I'm sure our audience look forward to all your lovely reports coming up.
Thank you. I love reporting for you guys. Much love to you all in Australia and whoever listens.
All around the world.
All around the world.
Even in California.
Yeah.
We should actually go back into the pub now and keep socialising, Penny.
Yes.
This is Ben Radford. I'm Deputy Editor of Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine, author of 6 books, including Tracking Chupacabra, and you can find out more about me at benjaminradford.com.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello listeners and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. This week I'm going to talk to you about watered-down science being taught in Australian universities. Now, if you live in Australia, you probably thought that homeopathy was not publicly funded in Australia, at least not directly. On The Zone previously, I've talked about how the government supplements private health funds, which can fund things like homeopathy, but this has always been indirect funding, not direct. Well, in the media in the last few weeks in Australia, there's been a lot of talk about complementary and alternative medicine being taught in universities. And a new lobby group known as Friends of Science in Medicine was recently established to get the discussion going about whether this is a good thing. Now, full disclosure at this point, because I recently added my name to the 400 long list of doctors, scientists and concerned citizens who are worried about pseudoscience creeping into universities. So the discussion has been taking place in the form of several articles written for a website called The Conversation and lots of articles in the mainstream media, including a poll which appeared in Fairfax this week where you can vote whether you think pseudoscience should stay in universities. And the discussion, not unsurprisingly, has ruffled some feathers, which I think is a really good thing. As I said in a comment I left on a story about this on the Conversation website, I don't see anything wrong with us looking at these courses and determining if what they are teaching is evidence-based. Now, if we find that there's nothing wrong with the courses, we can carry on our merry way and everyone's happy. Yet some CAM proponents don't seem to see it this way. Some have been behaving as if they are being persecuted, and some are claiming that taking CAM out of universities puts the public at risk as practitioners are more likely exposed to shonky teaching. Now, I haven't seen any evidence for this, but as usual, I'm willing to look at it if it is true. However, this misses the point that it doesn't matter where you teach pseudoscience. If it's nonsense outside of a university, it remains nonsense when taught inside one. So, for example, teaching homeopathy or tactile therapy in a university environment won't make it work. So recently on Twitter, the argument began to heat up, with one of Australia's most well-known doctors and supporters of CAM, Professor Karen Phelps, jumping into the mix. Now, on Australia Day, myself and several other people had quite a long conversation with her, which remained for the most part civil, if not a little heated. And this was until I suggested that we just weed out the stuff from universities that we know doesn't work or we know can't work. For example, subluxations in chiropractic and homeopathy. The response I received from Professor Phelps was rather odd, to say the least, and I'm still unsure exactly what she was getting at. Basically, my tweet to her said, "But homeopathy will never work. Subluxations for chiropractic will never be found." And her response to this was, "The homeopath argument is always the last refuge of the skeptic." Now, I'm not exactly sure what this means, but some people suggested this as an example of the no true Scotsman fallacy. And basically, this really means don't mention homeopathy, even we're embarrassed as CAM proponents by homeopathy. So in the meantime, I've been poking around for information on whether homeopathy is taught in universities in Australia as a standalone subject, and I haven't found any evidence. CAM practitioners indeed had confirmed this to me, pointing out that it was a requirement to enter the Bachelor of Health Science, Complementary Medicine at Charles Sturt University, but was not taught as a separate subject. Well, in fact, they were wrong. Homeopathy is taught as a standalone subject at a publicly funded university in New South Wales as part of Southern Cross University's Bachelor of Clinical Sciences. Indeed, they offer 2 courses in homeopathy, Introductory Homeopathy and Clinical Homeopathy, and it's also offered as a service in their health clinic. In fact, there's even a prize offered at Southern Cross University known as the Warren Brower Memorial Prize. It's awarded to the Naturopathy Award graduate who has exhibited a high level of proficiency in the understanding and application of homeopathy, and the prize is to the value of $500, and it's donated by Brower Natural Medicine. Now, Brower Natural Medicine are one of the biggest manufacturers of homeopathy in Australia, so since Southern Cross University is a publicly funded university, they receive government funding, and in 2011 they received $32 million. Thus, public funding is going towards the teaching of nonsense in Australian universities, and I say that with confidence because homeopathy is nonsense. So I've written to Southern Cross University to ask for their course outlines for both these classes, and I'm hoping I get to see them so I can get a better idea of exactly what they teach. So with continued pressure from Friends of Science in Medicine, this conversation will likely continue for some time, and I would like to see the first casualties to be these courses at Southern Cross University. The debate is still raging at the website theconversation.edu.au, and this comment that was left some time ago has really summed up this debate for me. It's from an ex-herbalist, and the following excerpt speaks volumes. Time to face the facts. The data is coming in and it's not looking good. It's clearly showing that what we do is not much better than placebo. So the question is, do we have the humility to accept the evidence and dump these theories? I doubt it. Have I seen the industry contest or reject its own stupidities, like live blood analysis or detoxing, when it can't name one toxin that its methods supposedly detox? No, it embraces them instead. If you'd like to leave a comment, you can find the accompanying blog for this week's Dr Rachie Reports on the official blog of the Skeptic Zone at skepticsbook.com. And for those listeners who are in Australia, I'm giving a talk on Wednesday, the February 15th, 2012 in Canberra for the Canberra Skeptics, entitled Diagnosis by Dr Google, where I'll be going through some of the more bizarre and strange information you can find on the internet, talking about diagnosis by Dr Google and how you can actually find accurate health information on the internet. The lecture is free. It goes from 6 o'clock till 7:30, and we're having dinner afterwards. So if you'd like to join us for dinner, you can RSVP at mail@canberraskeptics.org.au, and you can find more information about this talk at canberraskeptics.org.au. And until next time, this has been Dr Rachie Reports.
Dr. Rachel Dunlop is one of Australia's foremost media commentators in matters concerning so-called alternative medicine. She has appeared on national radio and national television. Dr. Rachie is available for interviews, and you can contact her at rachel@skepticzone.tv.
This is Carrie Poppy.
I'm Ross Blotcher.
Oh, hey, Ross.
Hey, we're from a podcast called
Oh No, Ross and Carrie.
We find out what happens when you show up and ask questions.
We've hung out with the Kabbalists.
The Mormons.
We've gone and gotten ear candles.
Gone to the Sikhs.
We show up so you don't have to.
So find out where we're going next.
We'll even have special episodes where we have famous guests like Brian Dalton from Mr. Deity.
You heard that awesome theme music? He wrote that.
You should come visit us at onopodcast.com or
facebook.com/onrack.
What the hell's OnRack, Ross?
ONRAC.
Oh no, Ross and Carrie.
That's our show.
That's so smart. Come join us.
Hi, I'm Reverend Stefan Sojka from the Charismatic Church of Our Lord Jesus the Martyred Lamb Hamburger Joint and Chapel beside the Sydney to Newcastle Freeway. And I've been asked by Jesus and by Living Ministry Software and Investment Corporation to speak to you today about our Lord. Praise be to Jesus. We've all heard of the face of Jesus being found in a piece of toast, a sheet, or a soiled nappy. Well, get ready, because Jesus is going to start being seen everywhere. Introducing Living Ministry Software and Investment Corporation's Jesus Face Recognition Software version 1.2 beta. Lord be praised. Through a state government software development grant I applied for and wrote myself into the proposal for a healthy consulting fee, Living Ministry Software and Investment Corporation have created the ultimate way to recognise Jesus' face in anything. Jesus Face Recognition Software version 1.2 beta at only €899 connects directly to any camera or scanner via USB once you have manually installed and configured the unrecognised non-compliant drivers, and can also browse any computer image library of unlimited size, detect and spuriously interpolate literally millions of instances of Jesus' face within your photo collection. We have developed an algorithm, praise Jesus, that looks for lines, points, shapes, colours and shading that might even remotely correspond across a huge spectrum of tentative, partial or long bow geometric and biometric matches to its built-in database of 700 million different images of Jesus, right-click saved from Google images. The files are then superimposed with the matching Jesus face image, ready to print out instantly and send to your local newspaper. Never again do you need to rely on your own brain's primitive pattern recognition faculties to see Jesus on the toilet wall. Now you can snap that photo with your iPhone and harness the power of Living Ministry Software and Investment Corporation's state-of-the-art facial recognition algorithms to find him. Hallelujah. Whether the image is in a cloud, a craggy cliff face, or an excrement-smeared pig's hindquarters, Jesus is everywhere. Jesus Face Recognition Software version 1.2 beta is so powerful it can pick out an image of Christ with the same or even better accuracy than an astrologer. If you thought tracing the minute detail of a scorpion's exoskeleton out of 18 points of light in the sky was amazing, try feeding your own wedding photos into our software application. Jesus will be revealed in the entree, the red wine stains on the tablecloth, and you might even find Jesus' face is an exact match on the celebrant, yours truly's face. Since I did get one of those caricature artists at the local markets to draw me looking like Jesus with a halo and crown of thorns a few months back and uploaded the image to Flickr, Picasa and my own webpage, naming it Jesus-face.jpg to ensure Google would pick it up. If you order now, we'll throw in for free our full set of expansion packs, the baby Jesus, Mother Mary, Moses and yes, even God himself. And coming soon, Jesus Face Recognition Software version 2, where we plug it into a pair of wearable goggles so that you can live your entire life bombarded by millions of images of Jesus overlaid onto your own augmented reality. In this version, we will also be adding the Satan expansion pack so you can know just how tenuous your grip on salvation is, with temptation literally everywhere. But fear not, it's nothing that a visit to the charismatic Church of our Lord Jesus the Martyred Lamb hamburger joint and chapel beside the Sydney to Newcastle Freeway and a special one-on-one spiritual healing in the motel room out the back can't fix. Hallelujah.
I'm Eugenie Scott, Executive Director of the National Center for Science Education in Oakland, California. We defend and support the teaching of evolution and climate change when it comes under attack for religious and political reasons. We help teachers, parents, school boards, and other citizens defend good science in the schools. Come visit us at ncsc.com and on YouTube and Facebook, and let us know if science comes under attack in your community. We're here to help.
This is Ian Bryce of Australian Skeptics, continuing with our description from a couple of weeks ago of the Rossi cold fusion tests. You'll recall that a couple of weeks ago we spoke of my investigation into Mr. Rossi's so-called ECAT energy catalyzer in Italy, which has, for the last year, he's been showing to scientists and making claims of producing much more heat out than heat in by virtue of cold fusion. So I'll just read a little bit for you from the press release that we put out. How Rossi's cold fusion tests misled the world's scientists. Inadvertent miswiring of leads is the cause. All around the world, thousands of people have been heralding the introduction of Rossi's ECAT energy catalyzer device, which claims to generate more energy output than is input due to low energy nuclear reaction, or LENR. What makes this claim different is that at least 15 scientists from around the world, including NASA, have lent some support for it after witnessing a demonstration or analysing the results. They generally conclude that the output power was apparently much larger than the input, and only nuclear reactions could account for the difference. However, Dick Smith, patron of Australian Skeptics, says, "It would be great if it's true, but it's more likely just a misconnection of the power lead." Bit of background now. Smith was approached in December to invest $200,000 in the scheme to provide almost free energy and thus save the planet from climate change. He sent aerospace engineer Ian Bryce of Australian Skeptics, that's me, to an investors' meeting on the New South Wales North Coast on January 13 to investigate. Now, you'll remember at that time I reported back to Dick Smith and said that there's a mysterious blue box involved here that I don't quite understand its purpose. We shouldn't invest in it until we investigate a bit more. Now let's recall the setup as the scientists have observed it. Firstly, the demonstration is taking place in a room and there's a power cord coming from the power point to a blue box. which has got some buttons and dials on it, and it's got a bunch of wires going to several resistive heating devices in the reactor, which is a copper device said to contain the nuclear reaction. And the heat output is measured by pumping in cold water in one end and measuring the amount of steam and hot water that come out the other. So by thermodynamics you can work out the increase in enthalpy, it's called, or the amount of energy produced by the nuclear reaction. Now the input power is measured by a voltmeter and ammeter placed on the active lead near the power point. And the observing scientists and observers have all noted that this seems to be a valid way of measuring the input power. They don't know what's in the blue box exactly, but if you open it up, there's no batteries or capacitors or energy storage devices. All there is some electronics, which appear to be simply regulators, a bit like a light dimmer for AC, industrial-type light dimmer. Several of those, each going to a circuit inside the reactor. But Rossi says it doesn't matter what output they're producing because their input from the power point is being clearly measured. Now picture this. The input from the power point is about 1.3 amps and 230 volts, producing about 300 watts input power. But the amount of steam coming out corresponds to about 3,000 watts. And this goes on for about 3 hours, so there's more output than input. And this is the situation that's been puzzling all the analysts around the world and adding a lot of credibility to cold fusion and enabling Rossi to gain some credence with investors to put money into the scheme. Now, since that time, what's happened is that I've been puzzling over this setup and wondering where the energy could be coming from, if it's not real. Maybe it is real cold fusion, but there are actually a few problems with it being real cold fusion. One is the lack of a theory to support it. Another one is Rossi's credibility. I'd like to correct something I said a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned Rossi not being a physicist. I should have said that he claimed to have a chemical engineering degree from Kensington University, and that claim turned out to be false. So now, what was wrong with this setup? It came to me at 3:53 a.m. I had a eureka moment, having trouble sleeping, all this boiling over in my mind, and I realised that let's suppose that the earth wire of this power cord had been connected not to the earth pin as it's supposed to, but to the active pin. So it can carry power into the blue box, and it's not being measured, because no one measures current in the earth wire. It's assumed to be zero. And let's suppose that in the blue box, the earth wire goes to a second regulator, called, let's say, the B regulator, which is going into a big resistor inside the reactor. Then Rossi can turn up these two light dimmers in effect, and there's an official power which comes through the active wire and shows on the meters to regulator A, and there's an unofficial power which is now coming through the earth wire to regulator B, unmeasured. And a lot of people have said that Rossi sits at this box fiddling with the switches a fair bit during the experiment, but nothing seems to happen to the input power shown on the meter, of course, because that's only the 300 watts. So my theory is that perhaps the earth wire has been misconnected at the power plug and inside the blue box to regulator B, so that there's an unofficial circuit bypassing the power meter. Now, whether this is deliberate or accidental, it's not for me to say, and so let's assume it was an accident. But that, nevertheless, this situation could have possibly applied for the first 7 demonstrations of ECAT, all the way from December 2010 through to about June in 2011. All the tests of 3 models called the 10 kilowatt model, the 3 kilowatt model, and the 3 kilowatt truncated model. So that could explain for the power gain there, because from the power plug you can draw about 12 amps, which is about the equivalent of 3,000 watts worth of power from a power point, and that would explain all of the steam generated. Now, going on after June in 2011, there have been several more demonstrations, but they've been of entirely different setup. A so-called 27 kilowatt device, much bigger, and in this case the wiring from the power point has been different and easily measured. The earth wire hypothesis can't explain those last 2 tests, but a number of other scientists have pointed out that there are thermocouples in the output circuit which are wrongly placed. He has a heat exchanger now in the output circuit, and the thermocouples are supposed to measure the temperature rise of the water flowing through the secondary circuit. Then the power generated is the temperature rise times the specific heat of water times the flow, all very simple thermodynamics. But in fact, the thermocouple appears to be responding instead to the steam temperature instead of the cold water, the secondary circuit. So that would have amplified the output power recorded there. So what it boils down to, that in all of the tests of Rossi's ECAT cold fusion devices, we've now got an explanation why the output power appeared to be more than the input power. We're calling on Mr. Rossi to repeat one of the tests. We suggest the test of the 29th of March, which was the best documented, and I'll go along there and I'll measure the power in all 3 leads, and we'll see if he still gets his excess power coming out. And if he does so, then I'll apologise and I'll be a supporter of his project. So that's the situation is at the moment. Since we've put out our press release and posted it on quite a few blogs around the world, there are a surprising number of blogs and forums devoted to Rossi's ECAT device, because there's a large number of people who have been convinced by the fact that all these scientists support it, quite rightly so, I guess. So we've put our press release where possible on these websites, and I've been very active on the blogs explaining what it's all about. We've got our basic press release, which you can download from the Skeptics website on www.skeptics.com.au, and that has links to supporting documents, because, like all scientific theories, it's only as good as the traceability of the data. So I've got a second layer of documents, of about 10 documents, that are linked from the main document, and anyone who wants further details to back up that, I can provide sources for all my material on this hypothesis. Now, boy, have the blogs been melting down as a response. It appears that some of Rossi's followers have had their nose completely put out of joint by my suggesting that there might be another explanation, and they've apparently done all sorts of Googles on me and come up with every bit of dirt they could find. Talk about slinging mud. I've been accused of creating the protest Pope-mobile for my own attention-seeking motives. What that's got to do with cold fusion, I'm not sure. And it's been pointed out that I'm a mere atheist, so what are my opinions worth? And all they do is attack me. I've yet to find anyone attacking the evidence about the experiments. They've attacked a few other statements I've made. For example, I said that things like it was a bit puzzling that Rossi was letting the wastewater from his reactor go down the sink, whereas one would expect it to be radioactive and be treated as waste if there's a real nuclear reaction going on. I also said that the scientists measuring radiation in the room detected no radiation, therefore there was no nuclear reaction going on. They say things like, yes, but this cold fusion is a type of low-energy nuclear reaction, and the physics is not all in on that yet, the theory, so maybe it doesn't produce any radiation. So I'm seeking some backup on these things from some of the real nuclear physicists around the world to find out how true these are. But the fact remains, from an experimental point of view, that I've provided tentative explanations on how the output energy could really equal the input energy, which would be a blow for Mr. Rossi and an equally big blow for low-energy nuclear reactions. You'll remember that in the last time we talked about this, I called for people around the world to send me an email if they've got any information or ideas on it. Well, I must say the response has been fantastic. We've had responses from Australia, from America, from Sweden, from South Africa, from Denmark, from the UK, but I've received a lot of advice on points where my physics is a bit weak, or other areas where my physics is okay, and they've come up with their own observations and comments. And I've even had one lady come and say, was I aware that such and such a group had attended a demonstration by Rossi on such and such a date, and they brought their own instruments, and Mr. Rossi was unable to get the reactor to go on that day. So this is yet to be confirmed, but this is the sort of message that's coming in, and I'm spending a lot of time tracking down these links to speak to the people involved to get to the bottom of it. And so far, we've had no evidence at all that would falsify the hypothesis. The most common problem, they've said, is that, don't you know that such and such a person measured the current on all 3 leads and disproved your hypothesis? And I have to say yes, but that was after July, when the thermocouple was the problem. Before July, where the earth lead was the problem, there hasn't been any case of anyone measuring the input power. So it's things like that that are useful feedback. I've got a detailed list of all the demonstrations that Rossi's done and a detailed list of all the scientists supporting it and what they said. which are linked from the Skeptics news release, and that's being amended little by little as further information comes in. So I hope that we've got a comprehensive and accurate database here that so far supports the hypothesis. So to wrap it up, we'd all love to find a new energy source which could maintain our living standard while cutting the carbon emissions, but it looks perhaps like there's a lot more work to be done before that source comes along. This is Ian Bryce from Australian Skeptics.
Hi, this is Surly Amy from skepchick.org. I make ceramic jewelry. It's hand-formed and hand-painted. It's inspired by science and skepticism. You can find it at surlyramics.com, surlyramics.com. Thanks, and be skeptical.
Well, thanks for listening to the Skeptic Zone. I believe I've lost Richard's transmission. He doesn't seem to be coming through anymore. That, or I bent one of the acupuncture needles with my headphones, but I've lost him. Not to worry, he will be back next time. And by the way, we are still on track to get that plane ticket for our reporter Maynard to make it to Las Vegas for TAM 10 in July. And that is only going to happen because people like you chip in, and we have to thank you on Maynard's behalf very much for doing that, because he's going to rip TAM up if he can get there. You know, I might even try to make it over myself. I've just got to find out a scheme to get there. Did I say scheme or scam? Scheme. All I can say is I'm just sick of all the other Skeptic Zone team having fun while I'm stuck in this studio all the time. Oh, one more thing for those in Australia. Channel 7 are repeating The One every Sunday at 11 a.m. Yes, by popular demand, you get to see Richard on the TV all over again, being his skeptical self on that very, very entertaining show. I won't say any more, otherwise I'll probably get sued. Well, that's it for me, Stefan Sojka signing off. We will have Richard back. I'm sure he's going to make a full recovery by next week, and it's all zoning away again next time. Thank you very much for listening from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.